I answered the phone on the fifth ring. It was 2:47 inches the afternoon on a Tuesday, which should have been safe. In 67 years, I've learned that devastating news usually comes at dawn or midnight, when the world is quiet enough to hear your heart break. Afternoon calls are supposed to be telemarketers or doctor's appointment reminders. This wasn't either of those things. "Hello? Mrs. Walsh? Catherine Walsh?" The woman's voice was professional, clipped, federal. "Yes, this is she." "Ma'am, this is Special Agent Rachel Mendez with the FBI's Miami field office. I'm calling about your husband." My hand tightened on the phone. I was standing in my kitchen in Oak Park, Illinois, sunlight streaming through the window over my sink. I'd been washing lunch dishes. A perfectly ordinary Tuesday afternoon. "My husband passed away 5 years ago," I said carefully. "Robert died of a heart attack in 2020. If this is about his estate, you should speak with—" "No, ma'am, not Robert Walsh. I'm calling about Thomas Walsh, your first husband." The dish I'd been holding slipped from my fingers. It shattered in the sink, porcelain fragments scattering across the stainless steel. I didn't move to pick them up. "Thomas died 35 years ago." There was a pause, the kind of pause that changes everything. "Mrs. Walsh, I need you to sit down. Can you sit down for me?" I was already sitting, my legs having made that decision before my brain caught up. The kitchen chair was hard beneath me, cold. "What is this?" I asked. My voice sounded strange, distant. "Ma'am, I'm calling because we've located a man in our witness protection program. He's been living under the name David Morrison for the past 35 years. Last week, the man he was hiding from died. Natural causes. With that threat eliminated, we've been working to reconnect protected witnesses with their previous identities. This man claims he's Thomas Walsh, born August 3rd, 1953 inches, Chicago. Married to Catherine Marie Sullivan on June 12th, 1976. Those were the right dates, the right names. But that's impossible. Thomas was killed. There was a body. We buried him in 1988. "I understand this must be shocking," Agent Mendez continued. "But Mrs. Walsh, this man knows things, specific things. He told us that you two had a song. A modified version of You Are My Sunshine where you changed the lyrics. He sang it for us. Said the second line went, 'You make me happy when skies are gray, even when your coffee's terrible and you burn the toast.'" I stopped breathing. Nobody knew about that song. Not my daughter, not Robert, not anyone. Tom had made it up on our third date when I'd tried to make him breakfast and nearly set my apartment on fire. For 12 years of marriage, he'd sung it to me every single morning. Even when I got better at cooking, even when we were fighting. Every morning, that stupid, wonderful song. "Mrs. Walsh, are you still there?" "I'm here." The words came out as a whisper. "There's more." He described a scar on his left ankle. Said it was from a dog bite when he was 7. Said it looks like a crescent moon. He also mentioned something about his handwriting. Something about how he dots his letters. He draws a star. I heard myself say it. Instead of dotting the letter I, he draws a tiny star. He's done it since he was a child. His teachers used to mark him down for it. "Yes, ma'am. That's exactly what he said." I stood up, sat down, stood up again. My mind was reeling, trying to process information that didn't fit into the story I'd been living for 35 years. "Where is he?" "Miami. He's in a secure facility here." "Mrs. Walsh, I need to ask you something important. Would you be willing to come to Miami? We need a positive identification. And if this is really your husband, I think he wants to see you." I looked at the clock on my kitchen wall. The same clock Robert had hung up 15 years ago. The same kitchen where I'd made coffee this morning, where I'd lived a completely different life than the one I'd had with Tom. "I'll be on the next flight." I called my daughter from the airport. Jennifer, 47 now, married with 3 kids of her own. She'd been 8 when Tom died. Old enough to remember him, young enough that Robert had become dad in all the ways that mattered. "Mom," she said when I told her. "Mom, this is crazy. Are you sure?" "No, I'm not sure. That's why I have to go. I'm coming with you." "No, baby. Not yet. Let me see first. I couldn't finish. Let me see if it's real. Let me see if my dead husband is alive. Let me see if my entire life has been a lie." She wanted to argue. I could hear it in the silence on the line, but Jennifer had inherited Tom's eyes and Robert's temperament. Practical, steady. "Call me the second you know anything," she finally said. "Anything at all." I promised I would. The flight to Miami was 3 hours. I spent it remembering. Tom and I had met in 1975. I was 22, fresh out of college with an English degree and no idea what to do with it. He was 24, working in his father's jewelry store on State Street. I'd come in to get my grandmother's ring resized. He'd made me laugh within 30 seconds of meeting him, made me fall in love within 30 days. We'd married a year later. Small wedding, big dreams. Tom was going to take over the store eventually. I was teaching English at a high school in Rogers Park. We'd bought a tiny house in Oak Park. Had Jennifer 2 years later. Life was simple, good, happy. Then came 1988. It was November 8th. I remember because it was the day after the presidential election. Bush had won. Tom had stayed late at the store to finish some custom work. A man had come in just before closing, demanded cash, jewelry, everything. Tom had tried to give him what he wanted. The man had shot him anyway. That's what the police had told us. The security footage showed a man in a ski mask, showed Tom falling, showed the gunman setting a fire before he left. By the time the fire department arrived, the store was fully engulfed. They'd found a body in the back office, male, approximately 30 to 40 years old, burned beyond recognition. But he'd been wearing Tom's wedding ring. The inscription inside was still readable. CM plus TW forever. I'd identified it. The police had been 90% certain. We'd held a funeral, buried a closed casket, tried to move on. Except you don't really move on from something like that. You just learn to carry it differently. I'd been 32 years old with an 8-year-old daughter and a mortgage I couldn't afford alone. Tom's life insurance had helped, but the jewelry store had been destroyed. There was nothing to inherit, nothing to sell. I'd gone back to teaching full-time, picked up summer school, worked nights tutoring. Jennifer and I had survived. I'd met Robert 12 years later, in 2000. He was a widower. His wife lost to cancer 3 years prior. He had 2 grown sons. We'd been introduced at a church coffee hour. He was kind, patient, steady in a way I desperately needed. We'd married in 2003. He treated Jennifer like his own daughter. We'd built a good life together. Different than the life I'd had with Tom, but good. Robert had died 5 years ago. Heart attack, sudden but peaceful. We'd had 17 years together, 17 good years. And now I was flying to Miami to see if my first husband was alive. The plane landed at 7:23 p.m. Agent Mendez met me at baggage claim. She was younger than I'd expected, maybe 40, with kind eyes and no-nonsense body language. "Mrs. Walsh, thank you for coming so quickly." She led me to an unmarked car. As we drove through Miami traffic, she briefed me. "I want to prepare you for what you're about to see. The man we have has been living as David Morrison for 35 years. He's 70 now. He looks different than you remember. Older, obviously. And he's been sick. Diabetes, heart condition. The stress of maintaining a false identity for decades takes a toll." "Why?" I asked. "Why did he do it?" Agent Mendez glanced at me. "That's something he'll need to explain, but I can tell you the basics. In 1988, your husband had gotten involved with some dangerous people, gambling debts. He'd borrowed money from Vincent Calabrese." I felt cold. Vincent Calabrese. Even I knew that name. Chicago mob, loan shark, enforcer, the kind of man who made people disappear. Tom owed him $75,000. He was 3 months behind on payments. Calabrese sent someone to collect. That robbery at the jewelry store. It was a hit, Mrs. Walsh. They weren't there for jewelry. They were there for your husband. But the body was Anthony Ricci, one of Calabrese's men. The FBI believes there was a confrontation. Your husband fought back. Ricci died in the struggle. Your husband panicked. He knew Calabrese would never stop coming after him, so he staged his own death, put his wedding ring on Ricci's body, set the fire, disappeared. My hands were shaking. I clasped them together in my lap. He contacted us 3 days later, turned himself in to the FBI field office, offered to testify against Calabrese in exchange for witness protection. We placed him in the program, gave him a new identity, sent him to Miami. He's been here the whole time? Yes, ma'am. Working various jobs, boat repair mostly. He's been alone, never remarried, never had more children. He said he couldn't, because he was still married to you. Why didn't he contact me? The question burst out of me. Why didn't he let me know he was alive? Agent Mendez's expression softened. He thought it was safer for you. Thought you'd move on, rebuild. He didn't want you and Jennifer connected to his testimony, didn't want Calabrese's people looking for leverage. And then, Mrs. Walsh, then years passed. 10 years, 20. How do you come back from that? How do you tell your wife you've been alive all along? We pulled up to a nondescript building in downtown Miami, federal facility unmarked. Agent Mendez led me through security, down a hallway that smelled of floor polish and recycled air. We stopped outside a door marked Interview Room 3. He's in there. We'll give you privacy. But Mrs. Walsh, I need to tell you something. He's terrified. Terrified you'll hate him. Terrified you've forgotten him. Terrified you won't want anything to do with him after what he did. I don't know what I want, I said honestly. That's fair. She opened the door. The room was small. Table, 3 chairs, one-way mirror on the wall. A man sat at the table, his back to me. When the door opened, he stood up slowly, like his joints hurt. Then he turned around. I would have walked past him on the street, wouldn't have recognized him. He was old, not the 3-5-year-old man I'd buried. This man was 70, his hair completely white, face lined with decades I hadn't witnessed. He was thinner than Tom had been, his shoulders stooped. He wore glasses. Tom had never needed glasses. But when he looked at me, I saw it. Those eyes. That way of looking at you, direct and a little hesitant, like he was afraid to hope for what he might see. Kathy, my name in his voice. I hadn't been Kathy in 35 years. I'd been Catherine, Mrs. Walsh, Mom, Grandma, but never Kathy. Tom. The word caught in my throat. He took a step toward me, then stopped. I don't know if I'm allowed to touch you, to hug you. I don't know what's okay. I closed the distance between us. I had to know, had to feel if this was real. When I got close enough, I could smell him. Not the way Tom had smelled. Tom had worn Old Spice and smelled like jewelry polish and coffee. This man smelled like generic soap and medication and salt air. Wrong. All wrong. But when I looked down, I saw his hands. Tom's hands. Long fingers. The same shape. The same tiny scar across his left thumb from when he'd cut himself on a wire clasp. And there, on his ankle, visible below his pants cuff, the crescent moon scar. I reached out, touched his face. His skin was different, aged, but the bone structure was the same. The shape of his jaw, the small chip in his front tooth from when he'd fallen off a bike at age 12. It's really you, I whispered. And then I slapped him. The sound echoed in the small room. His head snapped to the side. He didn't move, didn't raise his hands to defend himself, just stood there, accepting it. 35 years, I said. My voice was shaking. 35 years, Tom. I buried you. I mourned you. Jennifer grew up without you. She cried every night for 6 months. She slept in my bed until she was 12 because she was afraid I'd disappear too. I know. You let us think you were dead. You let us grieve. You let us build entire lives around the hole you left behind. And you were alive. You were alive the whole time. The tears were streaming down my face now. I couldn't stop them. I got married again. Did they tell you that? I married Robert. He was a good man, Tom. He was so good to us. He took care of us. He loved Jennifer. He loved me. And I loved him. Do you understand what I'm saying? I loved him. Tom's face crumpled. I know. I hoped you would. I hoped you'd find someone. You deserved that. I wanted to hit him again, wanted to scream at him. But I was 67 years old and exhausted and so confused. Why? I finally asked. Just tell me why. So he did. We sat down at the metal table, and Tom told me everything. The gambling had started small, he said. A poker game with some guys from the jewelry district, then bigger games, higher stakes. He'd won at first. Then he'd started losing. Kept playing, convinced he could win it back. It had spiraled. By the time he'd realized how deep he was, he owed $75,000 to Vincent Calabrese. He'd tried to pay, had been making payments. But the interest kept adding up, and Calabrese had gotten impatient. I should have told you, Tom said. Should have asked for help. But I was ashamed. I'd gambled away our savings, put our house at risk. I couldn't face you. Couldn't face what I'd done. So when Ricci came to the store that night, when things went bad, when Ricci ended up dead, Tom had made a choice. A terrible, selfish choice. He'd staged his own death. Let me believe he was gone. Entered witness protection. Testified against Calabrese. Helped the FBI bring down one of Chicago's biggest criminal organizations. I sent money, he said quietly. Every month. Anonymous. To an account for Jennifer's education. Did you notice? I had noticed. Starting 6 months after Tom's funeral, $500 had appeared in an account every month, for years. I'd thought it was from the FBI's Victim Compensation Fund. Had been grateful for it. Had used it to send Jennifer to college. That was you. I couldn't give you anything else. But I could give you that. We sat in silence for a long time. Finally, I asked the question I needed answered. Did you ever want to come back? Every single day. He looked at me then, really looked at me. Every single day for 35 years, Kathy. I've wanted to come back, but I thought, how could you ever forgive me? How could I walk back into your life after what I'd done? And then time kept passing, and you'd moved on, and I thought, maybe it's better this way. Maybe you're happier without me. I wasn't happier. I was different. I built a different life. But Tom, I never stopped missing you. Even when I was happy with Robert. Even when I was content. There was always a piece of me that was 32 years old, and standing in that morgue, looking at your wedding ring, wondering how I was supposed to go on. Agent Mendez knocked on the door, gave us a 5-minute warning. DNA results would take 2 weeks to process, she said, even though we all knew what they would show. Tom walked me to my hotel that night. Agent Mendez accompanied us, discreet but present. We walked along Ocean Drive, the Miami night, warm and humid, so different from Chicago. Do you remember our song? Tom asked suddenly. I stopped walking. Of course I remember. He started singing, quietly. Just for me. You make me happy when skies are gray, even when your coffee's terrible and you burn the toast. You'll never know, dear, how much I love you. Please don't take my sunshine away. His voice was older, raspier. But it was the same voice, the same song. I started crying again. Tom pulled out a handkerchief, handed it to me. When I opened it, I saw the monogram in the corner, TW, embroidered, and the W had a tiny star instead of a dot on the stem. You still do it, I said. The stars. Some habits die hard. We stood there on the sidewalk, 60-something-year-old strangers who used to be married. Around us, Miami buzzed with nightlife. Young people heading to clubs. Tourists taking photos. Life happening while ours stood still. What happens now? I asked. I don't know, Tom said. I'd like to be in your life, in Jennifer's life. If you'll let me. I know I have no right to ask. I know I don't deserve forgiveness. But Kathy, I've been alone for 35 years. I've paid for what I did, and I just want to know my daughter, meet my grandkids, maybe have coffee with you sometimes. I don't know if I can do this, I said honestly. I don't know if I can have you back in my life. It's too much. It's too complicated. I understand. But will you think about it? I told him I would. The DNA results came back 2 weeks later. Agent Mendez called me at home in Oak Park. It's a match, Mrs. Walsh. Thomas Walsh is alive. I'd known it already. But hearing it confirmed was still a shock. There's one more thing. The case against Calabrese all those years ago. Your husband's testimony led to convictions of 14 people. Calabrese died last month in prison. He was 89. Natural causes. Because of your husband's cooperation, dozens of other witnesses came forward. Families got justice. A criminal organization was dismantled. She paused. I can't tell you what to do, Mrs. Walsh, but I can tell you that Thomas Walsh saved lives, including probably yours and your daughter's. If Calabrese had known your husband was alive, if he'd thought you knew where he was, I think you understand. I did understand. That didn't make it hurt less. Jennifer came to visit me that weekend. We sat in my kitchen, the same kitchen where I'd gotten that first phone call. She'd brought photos. Her wedding, her kids, 35 years of life that Tom had missed. I don't know how to feel, Mom, she said. I barely remember him. I remember bits and pieces. A man who threw me in the air and caught me. A man who read me bedtime stories. But Dad, Robert Dad, he raised me. He was at my graduation. He walked me down the aisle. He was there. I know, sweetheart. But this man, Tom, he's my father too, biologically. And part of me wants to know him. Is that wrong? It's not wrong. Nothing about this situation is wrong or right. It's just impossible. We sat in silence. Then Jennifer asked, "What are you going to do?" "I'm going to go back to Miami," I said. "I'm going to have coffee with him, and then I'm going to see what happens next." I flew back to Miami 3 weeks later. Tom met me at a cafe in Coconut Grove. He looked better than he had in the Federal Building, more color in his face. He'd gotten a haircut. We ordered coffee. I watched him add cream and sugar. 2 sugars, light cream, the same way he'd always taken it. Some things don't change, even across 35 years. "Tell me about your life," I said. "Tell me about David Morrison." So he did. He told me about boat repair, about living in a small apartment near the water, about learning to fish, to scuba dive, to be someone else. He told me about therapy, about the guilt that ate at him, about the nightmares where he came home and I'd moved and he could never find me again. I told him about my life, about teaching, about Robert, about Jennifer's wedding, her children, about becoming a grandmother, about the person I'd become without him. We talked for 3 hours. When we were done, we'd finished a whole pot of coffee and it was getting dark outside. "Can I see you again?" Tom asked. "Maybe. I need time." "I understand." But then, as I was getting up to leave, I had a thought. There's something I need to know. That night, November 8th, 1988, before you went to the store, what was the last thing you said to me? Tom closed his eyes, remembering. "You asked if I'd be home for dinner." I said yes. I said I'd be home by 7, and we'd watch the election coverage together. I said I loved you, and you said, the words caught in his throat, you said you loved me too. You said drive safe. That was right. That was exactly right. Over the next few months, Tom and I met regularly. Coffee, lunch, long walks. He met Jennifer. That was hard, she cried. He cried. They hugged tentatively, like strangers learning each other's shape. He met his grandchildren. That was beautiful. They didn't understand the complicated history. They just saw a nice old man who told them stories about their mom when she was little, who bought them ice cream, who wanted to know everything about them. We didn't rush anything. Some days I was angry at him. Some days I could barely look at him. Other days I'd catch myself laughing at something he said, and it felt like 1982 again, like no time had passed at all. One evening, 6 months after that first phone call, we were sitting on a bench overlooking Biscayne Bay. The sun was setting, painting the sky orange and pink. "I never stopped loving you," Tom said quietly. "All these years, other identity, other life. I was always yours." I looked at him, at this man who was Tom but also wasn't, who'd hurt me more than anyone else in my life, who'd also saved my life in ways I was only beginning to understand. "I loved Robert," I said. "I need you to know that. It wasn't settling, it wasn't just practical. I loved him." "I'm glad." Tom's voice was steady. "I'm glad you weren't alone. I'm glad you had someone who took care of you the way I should have." "But," I prompted, because I could hear the unspoken word, "but I never stopped loving you either. Even when I was angry, even when I thought I'd moved on, there was always a part of me that was 32 and waiting for you to come home from the store." We sat there as the sun finished setting, watched the lights come on across the bay. "I don't know what we are," I finally said. "We're not married anymore. Not really. You're Tom Walsh, but you're also David Morrison. I'm Catherine Walsh, but I was also Catherine Roberts for 17 years. We're not the people we were in 1988. "No," Tom agreed. "We're not. But maybe," I said slowly, "maybe we can figure out who we are now, together." He looked at me. Hope and fear and love all mixed together in his expression. "I'd like that. If you're willing." "I'm willing to try." We didn't rush into anything. I kept my home in Oak Park, he kept his apartment in Miami, but we talked every day. Video calls, text messages, learning each other all over again. A year after that first phone call, I went back to Miami for a longer visit, a month. Tom and I spent our days together. We went to the beach, visited art museums, had dinner with Jennifer and her family when they came to visit. One morning, Tom made me breakfast. He'd always been a terrible cook, and nothing had changed. The eggs were rubbery, the toast was burned, the coffee was somehow both too weak and too bitter. I took a sip and made a face. Tom started laughing, started singing. "You make me happy when skies are gray, even when your coffee's terrible and you burn the toast." I joined in, our voices older, crackier, but together. "You'll never know, dear, how much I love you. Please don't take my sunshine away." When we finished, I looked at him across the terrible breakfast. "This is not a fairy tale," I said. "This is not happily ever after. This is messy and complicated, and there's no going back to who we were." "I know," Tom said. "But maybe that's okay. Maybe we don't need to go back. Maybe we can just go forward." "Forward," I agreed. It's been 2 years now since that phone call. Tom and I are not married again. I don't know if we ever will be. But we're in each other's lives. We have Sunday dinners with Jennifer. We take the grandkids to the zoo. We video call every night before bed. Some days are hard. Some days I'm angry all over again about the 35 years we lost. Some days Tom is consumed with guilt about what he did, about the choice he made. But most days we're okay. Because here's what I've learned. Love doesn't end just because someone dies, or because you think they died, or because they let you think they died. Love doesn't end because you love someone else, because you build a new life, because time passes. Love is more complicated than that, more resilient than that. Tom is not the husband I lost in 1988. I'm not the wife he left behind. We're two old people who used to be married, who've lived completely different lives, who've loved other people, who've become entirely different versions of themselves. But when he sings that stupid song about terrible coffee and burned toast, I remember. I remember being 22 and in love. I remember being 32 and broken. I remember being 52 and content. I remember all of it. All the versions of me that existed because of him, and in spite of him, and without him. And maybe that's enough. Maybe that's more than enough. Last week, Tom asked me if I ever regretted not staying in Chicago, not rebuilding the jewelry store, not going back to our old life. I told him the truth. That life ended in 1988. I can't get it back. Neither can you. But I don't regret the life I built instead. I don't regret Robert. I don't regret the person I became. I just wish I hadn't had to build it on a lie. He nodded. Understood. Then he asked, "What about now? What do we build now?" "I don't know yet," I said. "But I think, for the first time in 35 years, I think we get to decide together." He smiled. The same smile that had made me fall in love in a jewelry store in 1975. Older now, sadder, but still Tom. "Together sounds good," he said. And, you know what? It does. It really does.